She's doing everything right. Everyone says so. So why does she feel like she's drowning? What if the problem isn't her capacity? What if it's the fact that motherhood demands you give everything and then asks why you have nothing left for yourself? What if the exhaustion isn't just physical, it's existential? She wanted this. She chose this. But wanting something doesn't mean you were prepared for what it would cost, because the version of motherhood she imagined had room for her in it. And the reality doesn't. And nobody prepared her for the grief of that realization. Welcome to Unfiltered Adulthood, where we explore the quiet psychological shifts that reshape you in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. If this resonates, subscribe and hit like. There's a woman who sits in her car in the driveway for 10 minutes every day before going inside. Not because she doesn't love her family. Not because she doesn't want to be there. But because those 10 minutes are the only time in her entire day when nobody needs her. When she's not someone's mother. When she can just exist without performing the role she's supposed to be grateful for. She is grateful. That's the confusing part. She loves her child with an intensity that sometimes scares her. She'd do anything for them. She has done everything for them. And that's the problem. Because in the process of becoming everything to someone else, she stopped being anything to herself. Nobody warned her about this part. They warned her about the sleepless nights. The exhaustion. The logistics of managing a tiny human's needs. But nobody mentioned the other thing. The quiet disappearance of the person she used to be. The way her name would stop being her own and become a title. The way conversations about her would begin and end with whose mother she is, as if the rest of her ceased to exist the moment she gave birth. She thought motherhood would be an addition to her life. A new chapter. An expansion of who she was. And in some ways, it is. But what nobody told her is that it's also a subtraction. That the person she was before doesn't just continue alongside the mother she became. That person had to make room. And in making room, she disappeared almost entirely. The loss started small. Little things she didn't notice at first. Her friends stopped asking what she was doing because the answer was always the same. Her hobbies fell away not because she didn't want them anymore but because there was simply no time. Her thoughts, which used to wander freely, became consumed with feeding schedules and developmental milestones and whether that rash was normal or something to worry about. And then one day she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. Not physically, though her body had changed too in ways she's still processing. But the person looking back at her felt like a stranger. Someone who existed only in relation to someone else. Someone whose entire identity had been absorbed into a role she wasn't sure she knew how to play. The exhaustion everyone talks about is real. The physical drain of broken sleep and constant vigilance and the sheer amount of labor that goes into keeping a small human alive. But there's another kind of exhaustion that nobody mentions. The exhaustion of disappearing. Of becoming invisible in your own life. Of being needed so completely that there's nothing left of you that belongs to you. She started noticing it in conversations. Someone would ask her a question, and she'd start to answer, and then the baby would cry or need something, and she'd stop mid-sentence. And nobody would ask her to finish. Because what she was saying didn't matter as much as the need that had interrupted her. And after a while, she stopped trying to finish her sentences. She stopped expecting people to wait. She learned that her voice only mattered when it was addressing someone else's need. Her partner tries to help. He does. But even in trying, he's often asking her what needs to be done, which means she's still the one holding all the information, making all the decisions, carrying all the mental load. And she can't explain why that's exhausting too without sounding ungrateful. Because he's trying. Everyone's trying. And she should just be happy that people are trying, right? But the trying doesn't fix the fundamental problem. Which is that motherhood, as it's currently structured, demands that you become a support system for another human while your own support system quietly erodes. You're supposed to give endlessly without asking what's being taken. And when you do ask, when you do admit that you're struggling, someone will inevitably remind you that you chose this. That you wanted this. As if wanting something means you can't also find it hard. As if love and grief can't coexist. There's a specific moment that tends to happen for many women. A moment when the reality of what's been lost becomes undeniable. For her, it happened at a birthday party. Not her birthday. She can't remember the last time anyone celebrated her birthday in a way that wasn't just an afterthought scheduled around nap times. This was someone else's party. Someone she used to be close with. Someone who still had a life that included spontaneous plans and conversations that lasted longer than 3 minutes. She was there, technically. Physically present. But she couldn't participate. Not really. Because part of her mind was always on the baby. Monitoring feeding times. Calculating when they'd need to leave. Tracking whether the baby was getting overstimulated. And she realized, standing there in the middle of people she used to know, that she wasn't really there anymore. That the person who used to attend these gatherings without constantly being pulled somewhere else was gone. And nobody had noticed. Nobody had asked where she went. Because when you become a mother, people stop seeing you. They see the baby. They see the role. But the person underneath? She's invisible. She started to grieve. Not loudly. Not in a way anyone could see. But quietly, in stolen moments when the baby finally slept and she had 5 minutes to herself, and instead of doing something productive, she'd just sit there and feel the weight of everything she'd lost. Her freedom. Her autonomy. Her sense of self that wasn't defined entirely by someone else's needs. And the guilt that came with that grief was crushing. Because she loves her child. How can she grieve something when she has this beautiful person she made? How can she admit that love isn't enough to fill the hole left by everything else? That being someone's everything doesn't feel like enough when you're nobody to yourself. Nobody talks about this. Not honestly. There are platitudes about self-care and making time for yourself. But those platitudes ring hollow when you're running on 4 hours of sleep and the 15 minutes you have to yourself get spent doing laundry or catching up on bills or just staring at a wall because your brain is too fried to do anything else. And when she does try to talk about it, the responses are always the same. Other mothers telling her it gets better. People without children telling her she knew what she was signing up for. Her partner telling her she's doing great, as if doing great and drowning can't both be true at the same time. But they can. She is doing great. By every external measure, she's succeeding. Her child is healthy and loved and thriving. The house is mostly functional. She's keeping all the plates spinning. And she's also drowning. Because success in motherhood is measured by how well you meet everyone else's needs. And in that equation, your own needs don't just become secondary. They become irrelevant. There's a turning point that some women find. A moment when they stop waiting for permission to still be a person underneath the role they're playing. For her, it started small. She started saying no to things she didn't have capacity for. Not baby-related things. Those were non-negotiable. But everything else. The extra commitments. The social obligations that drained her. The expectation that she should be grateful for every moment because it goes by so fast and she'll miss it someday. She stopped performing gratitude she didn't feel. Stopped pretending that because she wanted a child, she wasn't allowed to find parts of motherhood suffocating. Stopped apologizing for taking space for herself even when that space was just 10 minutes in a parked car before walking into the house where someone would immediately need her again. And slowly, very slowly, she started to find small pieces of herself again. Not the person she was before. That person is gone. But a new person. Someone who could be both a mother and a human. Someone whose identity didn't have to be entirely consumed by a role. Someone who could love her child and still acknowledge that motherhood took something from her that nobody warned her she'd lose. And that acknowledgement, that honesty, didn't make her a bad mother. It made her a real one. The woman who felt like she was drowning started to learn something crucial. That the version of motherhood everyone sells you is a myth. The smiling, fulfilled, endlessly patient mother who finds complete purpose in her role and never feels resentful or trapped or like she's lost herself. That woman doesn't exist. She's a performance. And trying to be her is what drowns you. The real version of motherhood includes love. Deep, fierce, overwhelming love. But it also includes loss. The loss of your old life. Your old identity. Your old freedom. And you're allowed to grieve that loss while still loving your child. The two aren't mutually exclusive. They're just both true at the same time. Nobody warned her about that. Nobody prepared her for the fact that becoming a mother would feel like a death of sorts. Not a physical death, but the death of the person she used to be. And that grief is real and valid even when it exists alongside gratitude and love. She's learning to hold both. To love her child and miss her old life. To be grateful for what she has and acknowledge what she's lost. To recognize that wanting your child and wanting yourself back aren't contradictions. They're just the messy, complicated reality of trying to be a whole person while also being someone's entire world. And maybe that's the thing nobody tells you. Not because they're keeping it from you, but because it's too complicated to explain. That motherhood isn't one thing. It's everything. All at once. The best and worst. The most fulfilling and most depleting. The greatest love and the deepest loss. She's still figuring it out. Still some days feeling like she's drowning. Still some days feeling guilty for even admitting that. But she's also starting to understand that struggling doesn't mean failing. That finding motherhood hard doesn't mean she's doing it wrong. That being honest about what it costs doesn't make her ungrateful. It just makes her human. And humans are allowed to feel more than one thing at a time. Even about the thing they love most.